I just wanted to bring a Ukrainian perspective to the table. Half of my country has now been destroyed, and when I will travel to the east next, I will never, east or south of my beloved country, I would never see the cities as they existed before. They've been completely leveled to the ground, and people displaced. And the overall Ukrainian population now, it's about 20 million, while we used to have 38 or 40, and 7 million moved abroad. In the beginning of a full-scale invasion in 2021, Ukraine had 54 gigawatts of energy in different kinds and types of energy production. And next year, we just only have left 9 gigawatts because everything else was significantly damaged or destroyed by Russian attacks, which were quite hard. The gas is dirty, the gas is bloody fuel that fuels wars. And in Ukraine, we consider it to be the geopolitical weapons.
Right.
So for the EU, especially given the current political circumstances in the US, it would be much safer, beneficial, affordable, and peaceful perspective to say no to gas in a short term, replacing it with renewable energies, which Europe committed to do, but they do it gradually, slowly. They need to fasten because we are at the epicenter of the emergency for peace, for energy security, for climate, for human rights, for everything.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wicked Problems. I am Richard Delavitt, and my wife told me that I sounded a bit down in the episode we published earlier this week. She told me to cheer up, so that's me cheering up. And what better topic to cheer up on than the 4th anniversary, the 5th year of the war in Ukraine? Okay, that's going to be tough. But if anything is going to be able to help lift spirits and give hope, which, touch the sign, is not a fleeting emotion, but a discipline, then it's listening to someone like Svitlana Romanko, the founder of Razom We Stand, and who I met actually last year at the Laudato Si conference in Rome. We spoke after she was just doing a panel discussion with, amongst others, the Tuvalu climate minister, Dr. Mina Talia, who we had on the show. And after her talk there, we had a chance to catch up. So I thought this would be the perfect time to bring you this conversation because, unfortunately, if anything, has become more urgent. We discuss various aspects of her campaign, not just to end fossil fuel dependency from Russia that's helping to fund the war in Ukraine with purchases from Europe, but how it ties into the global campaign to end dependence on fossil fuels. And in fact, she presents quite a hopeful picture of what a post-war Ukraine and a rebuild of its energy system based on renewables might hold out hope for the rest of us. Now, without further ado, my conversation with Svitlana. Svitlana Romanko, head of Razom We Stand. Thank you so much for coming on Wicked Problems.
Thank you so much, Richard, for having me here today.
And we're here at the Raising Hope conference, staged by Laudato Si with a couple of other partners. Such a fascinating background, and the stories you've told, they've been quite moving. You're from Ukraine. Can you tell us a little bit about the organization of Razom We Stand, first of all, and what brought you here?
Sure. We've been established in early 2022 as a reaction to the global movement we helped coordinate. And the movement Stand with Ukraine to ban Russian fossil fuels, in all investments into them, and rebuild Ukraine on clean energy to enable the clean energy revolution across the world, and energy transformation. So we coordinated a coalition of 900 organizations from 60 countries of the world. And those brilliant organizations who joined the call to action, they advocated in front of their governments to ban Russian fossil fuels. But the plan was to ban an immediate threat. But the fossil fuels itself, it's a huge threat, not just to Ukraine, but far beyond its borders. And it threatens every citizen in every country of every nation right now from many different angles and perspectives. So we found vital and I in particular, as I am a founder, to establish this organization to help this movement to move forward. And what we were able to achieve so far, so our ultimate goal is to end global fossil fuel addiction that feeds Putin's war machine, but also other war vehicles around the world. And we see it's possible through the main pathway to this, through stopping financial flows for the fossil fuel purchases. And we've been quite successful on that way. Of course, we are not yet there because we know that Russia still earns money on export of their oil and gas. But we hope this will end soon, and the less money fossil fuel industry, including from Russia, has, the sooner we will live in peace altogether.
I want to come back to some more central questions, but I just kind of have to ask because it just seems such an odd circumstance we find ourselves in, is that one of the people who seems most determined to actually also push for cutting off flows of Russian fossil fuels also happens to be perhaps not exactly what we might call it a champion of the climate. That'd be President Trump, who seems to be both threatening allies and partners for continuing to use Russian fossil fuels, but of course wants to just replace them with American liquid natural gas. Just any thoughts on how weird that is?
Yes. Well, there is no good gas and bad gas. All gas is bad. All fossil gas is bad. So while we see an immediate demand to Europe to completely ban Russian gas as soon as they can, because they will deprive Russia of a very premium market they won't be able to recover or to replace with some else markets, including China, including other countries. But all gas must go. And what we've seen right now, yes, there was a huge agreement for many, many billions made between the EU and the US to replace one gas with another, but it's definitely not a way forward. The all gas is not, it's not sustainable, it's not a green fuel, how it's tried to be greenwashed by many fossil fuel industry companies. No, it's not. The gas is dirty, the gas is bloody fuel that fuels wars. And in Ukraine, we consider it to be the geopolitical weapons. So for the EU, especially given the kind political circumstances in the US, it would be much safer, beneficial, affordable, and much better and peaceful perspective to say no to gas in a short term, replacing it with renewable energies, which a European Commission and Europe committed to do, but they do it gradually, slowly. They need to fasten because we are at the epicenter of the emergency for peace, for energy security, for climate, for human rights, for everything.
And we're here at a conference that's sponsored by a faith group.
Yes.
It's a faith group with which you have had a relationship. You were the Zero Fossil Fuels campaign leader with the Laudato Si movement. So can you say a little bit more about this intersection between faith-based communities and organizations and how they can, what role do they have in being part of this? I mean, how do you connect the two between what you're doing now and the broader movement that people have been talking about here, and why is faith important in that?
Oh, faith community is being really essential to the climate fight and to phasing out fossil fuels, especially in the way I'm not even mentioning that there are billions of Christians, Catholics, and other interfaith people who are equally important, respected, and welcome to the climate movement and space. And I was particularly glad to see that this brilliant collaboration, interfaith collaboration, we continued at Laudato Si movement between interfaith organizations and cross-faith movements is being so alive and well. And I think these partnerships are the key for a successful combating the climate change, climate crisis, the crisis of politics, because as we act all together, that everything is possible. As an example, I just wanted to include the most successful divestment campaigns that were led by interfaith groups and partners. Everyone made his part: Buddhist, Islamic religion, like Muslim communities, like everyone, Anglican Church, Council of Churches, churches, Laudato Si movement, other partners. This was amazing. This movement was brought to life, and it was able to divest about $1 trillion of US dollars. As I said, going back to what I said, depriving fossil fuel industry of funds, the states that those fossil fuel industry companies are being actively lobbying and misusing those funds, not for the common good, but for common bad, and for putting everyone in crisis of living and the cost of living crisis, in lack of energy access, is energy poverty, and in a simple poverty, and in our case, in Ukrainian case, in the huge existential threat. So I would just welcome more commitments from divestment from fossil fuels, which are again ongoing this month. And I think everyone who has heart, who has moral compass not yet broken, which we always often can see happening in the modern world, but faith community brings me back to the hope that our moral compass is still right, it's not broken, and we expect the bold action will follow.
So some people have pointed to how, because fossil fuel interests are so enmeshed, right, in our economies, not just as individual corporate entities, but as stocks that are held by pension funds, for example, or banks that have, recently, after making commitments in Glasgow in 2021, have now completely abandoned their pledges to stop funding further fossil fuel extraction. So it's a difficult moment, and it's also, where do you draw the line between, investments that would be safe and ones for which you would say that people need to divest from? Just because I think a lot of critics point to that as being a reason why that we obviously can't do it then. Any thoughts?
Yes, you pointed it very well. We are at a turning point, at a very essential moment when the window or door of opportunity is yet open, but it's going to close soon. It relies to many things, which are fossil fueled and related, actually, starting from Russian aggression. It means a lot of how we tackle this all together as a global community. Otherwise, we will be deepened into the chaos, not just climate chaos, but also the law enforcement chaos and absolutely undemocratic regimes popping up here and there and trying to take more territories, resources, space, people, humans' life. We are all in that existential danger, but it's not just that. Yes, favorable political uncertainties and vulnerabilities of existent conflict between democracy and autocratism and also dictatorships are quite well known and well seen right now. But it all depends on people, because we need to take a stand. We can't continue profit on fossil fuels, like fossil fuels, do nothing to really stop these fossil fuel companies of not being complicit in climate crimes and war crimes and every type of crimes that fossil fuel are complacent in general, overall, for many, many years in many countries. And I believe that is the moment when we need to expand on renewables, because this is the energy of peace. This is the energy that can't be targeted by military attacks, because it's very much distributed, it's owned by many, and it's very affordable. So in Ukraine, we found it really helpful model when local communities, people, individuals, householders, utility companies, businesses, they started install panels, wind power plants, wind plants, and also some thermal heat pumps, just to enable the progress. They want cheap, affordable energy that it's not owned by fossil fuel companies that earn trillions on people, on damaging ecosystems, damaging people's health, and lobbying governments. And I believe the governments will follow, because the populism era that we are unfortunately entering in every country, because we can see the rise of far rights, but it's very temporary. They have nothing to offer. They have nothing to really offer to decrease the cost of energy, of electricity, to support people. They just can't talk, but this talk is empty talk, unfortunately.
And do you think people are clear enough about the relationship between a lot of these populist movements, parties, and the fossil fuel industry, which in a lot of cases is funding them, because then the policies that they then say that they want just happen to be the ones that benefit the industry.
Absolutely so, and we will have evidence of that being publicly released a bit later. I will definitely let everyone know when this happens, because we researched of how Russian oil and gas money lobby and through what individuals, organizations lobby the fossil fuel policies in Europe. And I think that what you said is very true. The industry is trying to save their status quo and fight for their profits, but the case is that they overprofited on us for many years, and this has to stop. And as I said, the best way to stop it is to rebuild where it's damaged with fully renewably powered system, which will bring our electricity costs down, that will create new green jobs. And the root cause problem is that we found ourselves creating fossil fuel economy and everyone being in, and now it's time to end and replace this economy with a fair, just and equitable energy transition to renewables.
On stage earlier, you mentioned a really arresting statistic about the power generation prior to the war and the invasion, and where it is now, where it needs to be to go through the winter. Could you just remind me of some of those numbers, because they were quite scary?
Absolutely, it is scary, and it's even going to get worse this winter, because Russia targets the gas stations, which used to be a balancing capacity for now for between renewables and nucleus and every other kind of shares in our power mix. So in the beginning of a full-scale invasion in 2021, Ukraine had 54 gigawatts of energy in different kinds and types of energy production. And next year, we just only have left 9 gigawatts, because everything else was significantly damaged or destroyed by Russian attacks, which were quite hard. So for households, that meant that we had power supply it could be 2 hours per 24 hours.
Wow.
It could be a bit more, it could be at different times. At night, when people used to sleep, you had to cook, to wash, to do basic house chores. And this is, of course, difficult, but Ukrainians withstand it. The cities created their points of unbrokenness, where there was a power, you could charge, you could work a bit, you could power your devices, because many people need to work, and this is the reality. And internet is also not working when there is no electricity with many homes. But our technicians and engineers, they are absolutely committed, brilliant, sleepless people who repaired everything in the blink of eye. And this is something, and they were able to repair from 4 to 5 gigawatts. But to pass through the winter, as our energy agencies are saying, we need 17 to 18.
Right.
So something was replaced with renewables up to 1 gigawatt, but we are not yet there, because some areas are at the front line when installation is really difficult and it could be damaged again. But other territories which are a bit more safe, yes, they deployed renewables, solar, wind, and every type which is available. And there are also significant results. So people can have surgeries, operations, even when there is a power cuts. And especially it's for the soldiers. These wounds can't wait. It's essential to have the timely intervention, medical intervention, to save lives. It's also schools and education for children, because they normally mostly have to study from the bomb shelters, which are not, we have to say, equipped, well equipped for that. And no one was planning that we will be facing such a horrific war in 21st century, which we consider to be the blooming of democracy. And unfortunately, we should have got it prepared, but it's still in the process. And I think we couldn't imagine this. And but I have a great hope, because the Ukraine overall clean energy, renewable energy potential is so significant. As calculated by scientists, it's 653 gigawatts that can be installed. It's huge. Ukraine is the largest country of Europe, yes, but this is still huge. It's a great resource that could power Europe, Ukraine, because that's enough of renewable power. And this is so important. So this potential is available, and we just expect some clean impact investments become available for our local communities, because rebuilding will happen on the ground with this local self-government, local businesses, local communities partnerships. They will be rebuilding Ukraine, and the state has to create all conditions for them and basically subsidize these activities rather than subsidizing fossil fuels. So we must double down our efforts just to bring us to a more safer, peaceful, renewable future. But when it happens, I want to end with the optimistic note, because in Ukraine we have two main traits that stand us alone and keep us resilient and moving forward. First is the humor. This is definitely the one. The second is really belief in that we will prevail, we will win, because we truly believe that good will always win over evil. And for that purpose, I think that when we rebuild Ukraine on completely renewable energy, it will become instrumental for other countries in the world suffering or have suffered from the same aggression, and we will be gladly sharing experience, inviting everyone, because this is the future we would like to see for ourselves, and we hope this moment will come soon.
Well, that is a hopeful note. I can't ask for a better one on which to end. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Svitlana Romanko, founder of Razom, We Stand. So thank you so much for coming on Wicked Problems.
Yeah, thank you so much, Richard, for our conversation today, for great questions.
Hope you'll come back.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, we thought it'd be an appropriate thing to bring you this week, the beginning of the 5th year of the war in Ukraine. And Svitlana Romanko has some very definite views about how that war could be shortened if only Europe and other places would go faster in deploying renewables. You can find details about how you can support Razom We Stand and Svitlana's work in the show notes, and we would encourage you to do that. So we will also end with some clips of her participation in that panel discussion at Laudato Si. And again, we're grateful to the Laudato Si movement for allowing us to be able to attend that meeting and talk to people like Svitlana. Back soon.
And I would not surprise everyone here, I believe, when I will link it directly to the fossil fuel regimes that still empower 53 dictatorships across the world. The effect of the war goes well beyond Ukraine borders for now, and there are other countries in the world that suffer from fossil fuel aggression from those countries. Just to highlight a few main points here, the first is, of course, when we speak about the fossil fuel military buildup, we have Russia on mind and Russian aggression, but we have also in mind other countries that are still own huge reserves of oil and gas in the world, and that historically has led them to become violent dictatorships. I will just name a few, which are Venezuela, Iraq, Iran. Of course, the US, who owns significant reserves of oil and gas currently, and gas-wise, it's Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and other Iran as well, and Russia. And we can see there is nothing democratic about those processes in the countries and how they treat their citizens, how they undermine democracy, both domestically and abroad. And just to bring the final point to hear about the fossil fuel industry, that, of course, just proven the theory, which is not a theory anymore, that fossil fuel dictatorships are being always fed and run by fossil fuel profits. And there are countries in the world, not just Russia, but we can see and say they are the most aggressive, unstoppable dictatorships that we are looking to have a just peace, but it's not something which just feels like completely possible and just being on the table, including within those international negotiations. Just direct action, less negotiations that lead to nowhere, and just less political theater, as we currently have seen happening in Alaska and elsewhere, but just more direct action, which directly means resilience, including depriving those fossil fuel states of their profits. Lastly, on the fossil fuel industry, just to bring the point that they always place a focus on maximizing their profits, and their profits are not being gained in a fair way, as we also know. So the countries still invade many nations. And the true energy security for those nations means complete independence from foreign energy sources, which are all the time fossil fuels, and also building just, secure, and renewable energy systems that serve all people.
I'm going to ask you first, so keep the microphone handy. I'm going to turn the table around again. I'm going to go into a first round of more in-depth questions, because now we are reacting to another intervention, but you have come here with your own stories, with your own experiences that you want to share as well. And as we said, the topic is resilience and the efforts that are being put and the agency of communities where you are. And I would like you, Dr. Maina, to please share with us, from your perspective, you know, the word resilience is quite loaded. We use it a lot. And sometimes we impose that tag on other people. They're resilient. What does it feel like, and what does it mean in real life from your efforts? You know, take a few moments, please, to share with us what that means when the threat is actually existential. I think that's a very important point, because there's nothing about going it alone. And for that, I turn to Dr. Svitlana, because you are in a context where you are constantly being required to stand and to fight and to name. Yes. And you were just telling me, I mean, being resilient can be quite exhausting. So maybe you could share a little bit about how the context you're in right now it complicates things, of course, because you have the war and you're still fighting for climate justice. And actually they go together, so.
Yes. Thank you so much. This is an essential question. What drives my particular resilience individually, but also collectively to many, many people in Ukraine and those who live abroad, it's just two main things. The first is to end global fossil fuel addiction that feeds Putin's war machine, but also phase out fossil fuels everywhere and build a vehicle that will help us to end fossil fuel dependence in those countries that are being dependent, but also everywhere. This is the main driver, I would say. We truly believe in that mission, and we've been acting so far through banning Russian fossil fuels, investments into them. We've been succeeded in some way depriving Russia of immense part, $500 billion of their fossil fuel profits, but they still have enough, and the job is not finished. And I'm not even saying about other countries, and I've been particularly inspired, seeing the example of Nigeria just recently, where the government acted in a very bad way, but they scaled up on renewables, and the bottom-up movement completely smashed the top-down government directives that were not working for the people. So the second thing that drives me personally is ability to achieve a just peace, which means many things. I can elaborate on that, but this means keeping our territorial sovereignty, keeping our territories, getting our population back, and creating the good jobs, green economies that will help us to end Ukraine dependence on fossil fuels as well. And also bringing here the third passion that keeps our resilience going is to rebuild Ukraine after we achieve just peace. But even right now, completely powered by clean energy, which can be a shining example for other countries that are being under the genocide attacks of the fossil fuel regimes and are being in the war, in conflict, which are fossil fuel states, petrostates we call them, are historically the most prone to an authoritarianism and abusing human rights, including right to a safe environment and climate. And lastly, I just wanted to bring a Ukrainian perspective to the table. Half of my country has now been destroyed, and when I will travel to the east next, I will never east or south of my beloved country. I would never see the cities as they existed before. They've been completely leveled to the ground and people displaced. And the overall Ukrainian population now, it's about 20 million, while we used to have 38 or 40, and 7 million moved abroad, suffering as well from the challenges of other kind. And then 1/3 of our population, which is 33%, lives in extreme poverty, which means $1.5 per day they have to run their households, which is not possible because everything became so expensive. Environment, and Pope Francis Laudato Si encyclical resonates so deeply with us at this stage we are in terms to hear the cry of the poor and to hear the cry of the nature. Our nature in Ukraine is also crying because unique natural reserves with unique species in central eastern Ukraine were destroyed completely. They will never, as we know, nature doesn't forgive that attitude. There will be decades needed to restore, as we all understand, and I am deeply sad about it. As an environmentalist, as a climate lawyer, I am so sad because I understand what delayed damage means for the next generations and populations. And I worry if the children of my children will be able to see what used to be Ukraine in the past. And just bring in another thing from the human rights perspective, which is undeniably intertwined with the climate crisis we are living in, because democratic states are those states that used to protect climate better. Yes, they are not ideal, but they at least create some regulation to make it possible. As you said, Kumi, it was very right. You said, just give you another type of mop, which is not helpful at all, but they at least provide something which we as a humans and people-powered nations can build upon. But for that perspective, unfortunately, we can't see huge progress and on that side. And human rights, the war toll has also been huge. It's over 150,000 of war crimes have been just registered, but there are much more, which are accompanied with unseen violence and terrorism and all the deadly things which we can't even imagine. And also all industrial plants were also destroyed, which will mean we will need to rebuild and rethink the way we produce the goods and to do it in a more sustainable, environmentally friendly way. And lastly, speaking on climate, the emissions from the military, of course, this is something which we would like to avoid, and but it's unavoidable for now, air pollution, and this means that there are the emissions from that over-exceeded the territory of some European states, and emissions that are being produced annually by European states as the Netherlands and others. While Ukraine has been on a good track to tackling emissions beforehand, we've been doing all possible, develop new nationally determined commitments, and this is how the things are. And lastly, just to bring more human connection and regarding energy poverty and energy access, which I know is a problem in many continents and countries, including African continent, where people lack the basic access to energy. But in Ukraine, what happened? We had 54 gigawatts of energy production, which was huge before the full-scale invasion. It was enough for us to run everything we wanted, even in a less energy sustainable way. But Russian attacks have demolished or destroyed everything, just leaving us with 9 gigawatts of energy. From 54 to 9, but to pass through the winter for everyone who is in Ukraine right now and run economy, we just need 18 gigawatts. So our incredible people, engineers, were able to restore 4 to 5 gigawatts. And with the external help, we've been able to live through the winter. But another winter is coming, and Russia increases the attacks. So international solidarity is so much needed in whenever we leave, because whenever we leave, it does not matter. We always are capable of action. And for me, those actions are in mainly speaking politically, not being inactive. As Pope Leo said, it deeply resonated with me that not being inactive, take action, because our action today defines our future tomorrow. Thank you.
I want to give one final word to Svitlana, because you didn't get to speak about hope and how it motivates you and where you gather it and what role you see for faith leaders perhaps in fostering it.
Oh, thank you. This is a really message I wanted to finish with. Thanks so much for this opportunity and for wonderful Laudato Si movement in general for organizing such an inspiring gathering for all of us. We, in spite of the horrific attacks and the war experience, we hadn't lost our belief in Ukraine, and we can see it everywhere. We can see the seeds of hope popping up after sleepless nights in the bomb shelters, where some families won't be able to wake up anymore, and children. But others who survived that night, they are going out, keep their jobs moving, making a coffee, try to live their life, and try to protect what is very dear to them. This is amazing how life goes on under the horrible effects of the war, and I am so much inspired by this. And this is some inner source where we keep our belief alive and well, and how we believe, because otherwise, if we wouldn't have believed in that Ukraine can achieve win, we won't be even able to withstand for these 3.5 years of a terrible direct attacks. Also, what keeps us going, seeing how individuals, small, medium businesses, and local communities install solar panels and small wind plants as well, where they can, because everyone understands in Ukraine right now, I guess, that we shouldn't be run on the fossil fuels, which has led us to that point we are all in. And definitely, this is a future task, and my hope is that Europe, but also the world, will finally awake to breaking their gas dependency, because I just checked the most of public money, taxpayers' money, which all of you hardly work for to pay the state, they are going to subsidize the gas industry the most. Check the recent report of the Oil Change International, they just spoke about it. Yes, governments fund gas. We don't need the harmful, dirty gas to power our homes. We won't need it in the future, including LNG. And Ukrainian communities and people prove that under the most difficult circumstances, they power hospitals, schools, essential utilities by solar and wind, which is, as Bill McKibben said, can't be owned by anyone, by oligarchs, by dictators, by autocrats. So this is free and will remain free. And this is our task, to use those decentralized sources as much as we can and build this energy independent for us and more generations to come, and rebuild Ukraine on renewable energy. But not just that, drive a clean energy revolution, which will be immediate, which won't take 1 million of years, and end this harmful debts for the economies that are never experienced for clean energy investments. We need to bring more money to the local communities, including but the most powerful states that consume the most.
Welcome to Ukraine!
Thanks for listening to Wicked Problems, made possible through the generosity of people like you. If you liked this conversation, please share it and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps people find the show. If you'd like an ad-free version of this podcast, consider becoming a paid subscriber at wickedproblems.earth. You'll also get our newsletter, all our show notes, member-only goodies, and you'll be supporting media that wants to tell the stories at the frontier of climate tech. The place where people and politics, technology and capital meet and shape the future. And whether it's one you'd want to live in. Wicked Problems is written and edited by Richard Delavan. Production assistance was provided by me, Theodore Delavan. Wicked Problems, Climate Tech Conversations, is a production of Wicked Problems Limited. Thanks again for listening.